Age 13 hadn't been perfect for Dex either, she recalled now, studying him from the couch where she'd been directed to sit next to a still unconscious Daphne. He and Isaac were kneeling in front of the Christmas tree with their hands clasped behind their backs, an alien with a ray gun behind each of them. It was his unhappy expression that unearthed yet another sepia memory. His mom had been really sick. Gini had been too young, too 13, to really understand what he'd been going through. It was something that happened in the world of grown-ups, and his mom had gotten better. She'd looked great the last time Gini saw them. She half frowned. His parents hadn't mentioned Dex might be moving back either, but maybe they hadn't known last year. They never talked a lot about Dex to her. It was as if they knew there was nothing to know, she reminded herself, was there. She frowned. Did all her inner confusion have more to do with the holiday and the stress of seeing little green men? Or were there still embers at the bottom of their old fire? He'd broken her heart once. Looking at him now, getting pelted with memories of how it had been, it was hard to believe he'd done that. She trusted him now, in some ways, like she had then. Felt like it would be okay because he was here too. Was she turning into 13 in her head, not just a body thing? Or did knowing why sort of help restore some of the trust she was totally surprised to still feel? Not with his getting engaged part. Nothing could erase that. Even now she could feel that choking sense of disbelief. The feeling she'd walked into a waking nightmare. Not her Dex. He couldn't. He wouldn't. But he had. She was old enough now, on the inside anyway, to realize that what happens in high school should sometimes just stay in high school. In that one way, her dad had been right. They'd been too young, too wrapped up in each other to really know much. Had it been about comfort and feeling safe, or had they missed their chance at love? If she could go back, but they couldn't. The green dude had been emphatic about that. But she couldn't help but wonder about the what if. What if they hadn't broken up? Would they have made it all the way? Would they be together now? What road not traveled would have looked like? If she could go back. I don't want to, she said, shocked to hear her voice break the silence. Dex shot her an inquiring look. She felt her cheeks heat. Because here she was doing the romance heroine introspection instead of figuring out what to do about the little green people. Even if she couldn't do anything, she should try. She owed it to all the characters she'd put in harm's way. And got them out of trouble, she reminded herself. Geez Louise, she was acting like she really was 13 and stuck on an angst cycle that was spinning its wheels in the past. I'll tell you later. Maybe. So, now what? It's Christmas, Desi said, as if Gini had asked the question of her. We sing Christmas carols and read Christmas stories and get ready for Santa to come and make all our dreams come true. Gini met Dex's wry gaze. She didn't know whether to be afraid, or very afraid. Ho, ho, ho. So her mom was working with the aliens, or with Santa's elves. Was it possible they really were on Santa's team? That this was the moment she'd dreamed of until the revelation that Santa was an in-your-heart deal, not an actual magic man in a red suit. What kid didn't want to be the one who got to meet him and know he really was for real? What if they were muffing it? It was as if Dex heard her thoughts. His brows arched and his head tipped to one side as he gave her a classic really look. She half shrugged. Which was more ridiculous? Believing in Santa or aliens? At the moment, it was a toss-up, though there hadn't ever been ray guns in the stories. But would the authors of the stories know Santa's elves didn't have ray guns? It was a dangerous world, and supposedly Santa knew who was bad. Desi trotted over to the big upright piano in the corner and lifted the lid. She looked at it, a flicker of her mom appearing in her eyes. She flexed small hands, as if realizing they weren't the size they were supposed to be for playing the piano. Could Mom play again, now that she was young? Arthritis had sidelined her hands from doing a lot of things some years back. Van, who hadn't quit her lessons, had taken up the baton of providing the musical accompaniments. Gini, who had quit, could pick out the tunes with one hand, well, some of them. If her mom deputized her to play, it might be an outing of her non-Vanness. "I need my music books," Desi said, her tone tracking between old and young. She looked at Gini. "Why aren't they here?" Because there had been no one in the house to play them. The present went out of focus again as she saw all of them, even her dad, standing around the piano and singing. Desi's small face brightened. "I remember. They are in the big cupboard in the kitchen." "Do you want me to get them?" Ginny asked, half rising. She shook her head. "Steigrix will help me." It sounded like her mom choked on something, but one nodded, leading her to believe her mom had said his name. There was something in his expression that Ginny found comforting and uncomfortable. He obviously liked her mom, so he wouldn't want to hurt them, would he? On the other hand, did her mom have a thing going with an alien or an elf? Either was kind of ick. She waited until Desi and one were out of sight, then looked at Dex. Her mouth worked a couple of times. This can't possibly be happening. Ginny thought she thought this, and didn't say it out loud, until she heard the words come out her mouth and kind of echo around the high-ceilinged room. "You were large, now you are not. What is not to believe? Ask 2. Or possibly 3. She still couldn't tell them apart, even after, what, a half an hour's exposure to them. "Well," Ginny said, even though she was pretty sure she shouldn't, "people generally don't get little around here. Well, they shrink sometimes." She flicked a look in the direction her mom had gone, "but they still get older." "Christmas is for children," Dr. Five said. "Yes, it is." Dex jumped in before she could. "But we all had our shot at being young. We step aside for the next generation. It's our way." "You are not fond of your way," 3 pointed out, "unless it was 2. You complain about it. You complain about it a lot." The others nodded. Just how long had the little green aliens been watching them? Dex gave her a look that seemed to suggest she could take this one. She started to say that they didn't always say what they meant. When it occurred to her, that was probably not the best thing to say with the ray guns in play. She licked her lips. "It's complicated," she said. "We look back at when we were young, because being an adult is complicated and challenging, and it feels like life was simpler back then. Except for 13, she could have added, but she didn't really want to be made younger than she already was. "So we wax nostalgic, but what we're really saying is that this grown-up thing is hard." Desi appeared in the doorway with one. They both had music books clutched in their hands. Gini met her childish gaze and added, not sure if she said the words to her mom, the aliens, or herself. "Holidays stir up a lot of emotions, a lot of memories. It's natural to look back, to remember, to wish." She hesitated, glanced at Dex, but not for long. She turned back to her mom. "To wish you'd done something different, but who we are, what we are, it's because of, well, everything. All the choices, all the mistakes, all of everything, the good and the bad. If you take out this or that, you aren't you anymore." "This feels like me," Desi said, another longer flash of her mom in the very childlike gaze. "I wish." When she stopped, Gini prompted, "What do you wish, Desi?" Her mom had had dreams. She must have. Gini knew this logically, but it was hard to know it, to feel it for one's mom. Moms were moms. They were just there except when you needed them, and then they were moms, not someone with needs and wishes. Seeing her like this, well, it felt different. Confusing and scary, like a rug had been pulled from beneath her feet. Was this what it would feel like to lose her? Thin arms tightened around the music books and the small mouth pursed. Her head turned toward one, and Gini knew there was something longer and deeper than she personally felt comfortable with, between them. Daisy shifted the book so she could hold out her hand. One shifted his burden so he could take it, the long fingers closing like long green stems around Desi's, his fingers wrapping at least twice around her thin wrist. It was both creepy and sweet, but mostly creepy. It was kind of immature of her, maybe, but she was stuck in a 13-year-old body watching her mom hold hands with a green alien. She felt entitled to be immature, to feel a bit betrayed. "You wouldn't have believed me," Desi said, but her voice was Mom's. This was her mom from several years ago, before her memory began to sputter and pop. It was filled with certainty, wisdom, some humor, and more resignation. Gini opened her mouth to defend herself, to protest maybe, but her mom was right. "No, I wouldn't have believed you." "They never believe," one said sadly. "Mulder did," Ginny said a bit weakly. All of them gave her looks, even Isaac, who shouldn't have known about X-Files. "No," Ginny felt compelled to admit. "They don't believe. We don't believe." They talked the talk, but they didn't believe down where it mattered. Even with the flying saucer up on the housetop, part of her didn't believe. "We hoped," one gave her a skeptical look. "We do hope. That's why we write about it and look up." "I believe," Isaac said. All eyes turned toward him, but no one knew quite how to respond, since his belief, while not exactly panic, had morphed into an attempt to take the flying saucer. It had certainly contributed to their current crisis, vis-a-vis the ray guns. "Maybe you can only believe when you are little," Daisy said, "but then you are too small to know what to do with that believing." Jeannie had the sensation of listening in, or coming in late, to a conversation. Like she was eavesdropping on something she had no part or place in. When did... She gestured toward the aliens. "How..." "They borrowed me when I was little," her mom said. Color surged into her thin cheeks, and it almost seemed that she got a little bigger. She looked at one. "I was afraid at first, but Stygrix was little too. Littler than now, I mean. He helped me. He was my friend. I should have forgot getting borrowed, but I didn't." She looked pleased with herself. Her mom had always liked doing the unexpected. "Did you tell anyone?" Dex asked. Jeannie thought about her mom's parents, trying to imagine that conversation. The cabin had originally been theirs, though her parents had updated it several times over the years. It was just a cabin. A bit of a cliché, really, not the locus of a failed first contact. "Stygrix said if I did, either no one would believe, or if they did, it would be bad. I didn't want to be studied or get in trouble. Or anything. I slipped a couple of times, but my mom and dad thought it was my imagination." It was the logical conclusion. "Grandma told me you had an imaginary friend," Jeannie said. Had this encounter made her mom quirky, or had her quirky been there and appealed to the aliens for some reason? Had Jeannie's own geekiness begun with her mom's alien abduction? It was very hard to be Deezy's daughter and be original, and wow, wasn't that a 13-year-old thought? And Stygrix didn't want to be cut open. "I still do not want that," one said emphatically. The others nodded, their platter gazes getting wider with alarm. It never goes well. Jeannie said the words slowly, looking at each of them, and then finishing at one. "Have you tried this before? Tried to talk to us, not just Desi?" "Always they panic," Dr. Five said sadly. "So we make them forget, or mostly forget. You wrote the paper, you who are the child of our friend Desi, and we had cause to hope again, and we wish to see her once more." One smiled at Desi. Ginny was not sure which was more disturbing, the alien crushing on her mom, or the realization just how much she wasn't the sister they were looking for. Dateline. Notes from Isaac's strategic planning notebook. "I was hoping for Santa and his elves, but aliens are next best. Wish I'd gotten in the flying saucer, though. Looked pretty sick before they tackled me." Dateline from Daphne's cell phone. "If I keep my eyes closed, this will all go away." but I will never, ever forgive Dad. Dateline, Advanced Scouting Party Report. We have hope again. Oh, wait.